In a bold move aimed at reshaping the regulatory landscape, President Donald J. Trump has launched a sweeping deregulation initiative that mandates a drastic reduction in government oversight. Signed into effect on January 31, 2025, this new executive order requires federal agencies to eliminate 10 existing regulations for every new one they introduce. The administration asserts that this measure will not only stimulate economic growth but also curtail the burdensome regulatory framework established during the Biden presidency, which it claims has imposed an unprecedented financial burden on Americans. The initiative, positioned as a catalyst for prosperity, aims to significantly lower the overall cost of federal regulations. According to the order, the Director of the Office of Management and Budget will play a crucial role in ensuring that the incremental cost of all new regulations, including those repealed, results in a net cost reduction for fiscal year 2025. This ambitious goal reflects Trump's commitment to promoting entrepreneurship and innovation by removing what he describes as job-killing regulations that stifle small businesses and inflate living costs. The context of this initiative is rooted in Trump's previous tenure, during which he successfully implemented a 2-for-1 deregulation policy that ultimately eliminated 5.5 regulations for every new one introduced. Trump's first administration was characterized by aggressive regulatory rollbacks, a strategy he is now re-emphasizing in a bid to enhance the daily lives of American citizens and bolster economic activity. This new directive seeks to build on those past successes, with the administration claiming that over-regulation fundamentally undermines consumer choice and individual liberties. Critics of the Biden administration have pointed to the estimated $1.7 trillion in regulatory costs imposed during his time in office as evidence of harmful overreach. They argue that such extensive regulation hampers economic growth and exacerbates the cost of living, particularly through rising energy prices. Trump's administration views this deregulation initiative as a necessary corrective measure to restore what it sees as a healthy balance between regulation and economic freedom. However, the reception of this announcement has been mixed. Supporters hail it as a necessary step toward economic revitalization, while detractors warn of potential oversights that could arise from lax regulation. Critics argue that the elimination of regulations may lead to increased risks, particularly in sectors where oversight is essential for public safety and environmental protection. They caution that a rush to deregulate without careful consideration could have long-term detrimental effects. As President Trump embarks on this ambitious deregulation agenda, it remains to be seen how it will be implemented in practice and what specific regulations will be targeted for repeal. The administration's ability to navigate pushback from various stakeholders, including Congress, state governments, and advocacy groups, will be crucial in determining the success of this initiative. Looking ahead, the implications of this deregulation effort will likely shape the political landscape as both supporters and opponents mobilize ahead of the next electoral cycle. With the backdrop of a contentious political environment, the outcomes of this initiative could have lasting effects on regulatory policies and the broader economic framework of the United States. As Trump seeks to reassert his influence in American politics, this initiative will undoubtedly be a focal point in discussions surrounding government oversight and economic policy in the years to come. The recent actions taken by the Trump administration regarding U.S. humanitarian aid have sparked outrage among aid organizations and public health experts worldwide. After a series of abrupt stop-work orders, numerous vital medical programs are now at risk, potentially leading to dire consequences for millions of vulnerable people. Despite claims from the administration that life-saving operations would continue, many organizations find themselves in a state of confusion and paralysis, unable to fulfill their commitments or provide critical care. On January 31, 2025, staff members at several U.S.-funded medical facilities in Sudan faced a harrowing decision: comply with President Trump's directive to cease operations or allow up to 100 severely malnourished children to perish. They chose to defy the order, continuing their work in an act of desperation. "I've never seen anything that scares me as much as this," said Dr. Jennifer Furin, an infectious disease specialist at Harvard Medical School who received a stop work order for her program aimed at treating drug-resistant tuberculosis. "The implications of halting such essential services are staggering. Infectious diseases do not recognize borders and the fallout could resonate globally." The administration initially announced a freeze on humanitarian aid last Friday, prompting widespread chaos as organizations scrambled to understand the new directives. While officials later claimed that exemptions for life-saving efforts would be honored in practice, many groups still face operational shutdowns. According to Marcia Wong, a former deputy assistant administrator at USAID, "We need to correct the impression that the waiver was self-executing by virtue of the announcement." Many aid organizations remain in limbo with limited guidance on how to navigate the complicated waiver process. As the situation escalates, experts have warned that this could represent a seismic shift in U.S. humanitarian policy, potentially rivaling the Marshall Plan in its impact. The U.S. provides approximately $60 billion in non-military humanitarian aid annually, a vital lifeline for countless communities across the globe. However, the current freeze has already caused irreparable harm, with some organizations forced to lay off staff and halt critical projects, potentially affecting millions of lives. The ramifications of this policy extend far beyond immediate healthcare services. Aid groups that have historically relied on U.S. funding are now scrambling to find alternative sources of support, as many lack the cash reserves to sustain operations in the meantime. A CEO from one such organization estimated that up to 3,000 aid workers in Washington alone could lose their jobs due to these cutbacks. Critics argue that this chaos undermines not only humanitarian goals but also U.S. interests abroad, opening a vacuum for adversaries like China and Russia to fill. As the Trump administration continues to reshape the landscape of foreign aid, the implications of these decisions could be profound. With ongoing crises in regions like Ukraine, Yemen, and Palestine, the halt in humanitarian services creates a perfect storm for disease outbreaks and humanitarian disasters. The U.S. has long been seen as a reliable partner in international aid efforts, and this sudden shift has left many allies questioning America's commitment. In a striking example of the potential fallout, the halt in the President's Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief (PEPFAR) could jeopardize the lives of over 680,000 pregnant women in Africa, with a 90-day interruption potentially leading to an estimated 136,000 babies acquiring HIV. The urgency of the situation cannot be overstated as the aid community watches anxiously for the administration's next move. In response to mounting criticism, the administration has defended its actions, claiming to root out waste and inefficiency in foreign aid programs. However, the lack of clarity and guidance from the government has left many organizations feeling abandoned. The situation has been further complicated by the recent furloughs and firings of key personnel at USAID, exacerbating the confusion and fear among those still trying to fulfill their missions. As aid organizations continue to grapple with these unprecedented challenges, the future of U.S. humanitarian efforts hangs in the balance. The unfolding drama raises critical questions about the role of the U.S. in global health and humanitarian aid, and whether the current administration will reverse course or double down on its controversial policies. The coming weeks will be crucial in determining the fate of countless lives that depend on these vital services. In a dramatic turn of events, recent actions by the Trump administration have raised serious concerns regarding the future of foreign aid and federal health data. As the former president continues to navigate his second term, his administration's decisions are already sparking confusion and criticism across multiple sectors, illustrating a contentious intersection of politics, policy, and humanitarian efforts. On January 20, President Donald Trump signed an executive order imposing a 90-day pause on new foreign aid programs ostensibly aimed at enhancing efficiency and aligning with U.S. foreign policy. However, by January 24, Secretary of State Marco Rubio escalated the situation by effectively halting operations at the U.S. Agency for International Development (USAID). Under his directive, no new projects could commence and most existing programs were suspended, sending shockwaves through the agency and its numerous partners. Chaos and confusion began to spread through the ranks of USAID, noted sources close to the situation, with many employees uncertain about the status of their projects and funding. The freeze has forced aid organizations to make heart-wrenching decisions about whether to continue essential services. One organization running child nutrition clinics in impoverished regions held an emergency meeting to determine if they should close facilities that provide critical assistance to malnourished children. Ultimately, they chose to keep the centers operational by reallocating non-USAID funding, but not without considerable risk. Similar dilemmas are being faced across the globe, with charities grappling with whether to comply with stop work orders or continue delivering vital services. While routine transitions in government often entail program reviews, the scale of this freeze is unprecedented. Tim Reeser, a foreign policy aide to former Senator Patrick Leahy, remarked many of the programs will cease to be effective if they're not consistent. If a medical clinic closes, infectious diseases can spread quickly. Observers have noted that while reform within the aid sector may be warranted, dismantling operations in such a haphazard manner undermines years of established humanitarian efforts. Compounding the chaos, Trump's administration is also facing backlash over recent changes to federal health data. Reports indicate that entire pages of essential health information have been erased from federal websites, coinciding with efforts to target so-called gender ideology. Critics argue that this move not only obscures vital public health information but also represents a broader trend of politicizing data to align with specific ideological goals. The implications for public health are dire, as access to accurate and comprehensive data is crucial for informed decision-making and policy development. In a separate but equally fraught scenario, President Trump addressed the nation following a tragic air collision that claimed the lives of 67 individuals. While he initially expressed condolences, his remarks quickly devolved into a political tirade blaming his predecessors for the tragedy based on their hiring practices. This approach has drawn criticism from multiple quarters, with political leaders and citizens alike calling for empathy and sober reflection in times of grief. When pressed on his comments regarding the qualifications of air traffic controllers, Trump deflected, asserting, "Because I have common sense." This statement encapsulates the growing concern that in moments requiring unity and healing, the administration is instead fostering division and controversy. As the Trump administration continues to grapple with these multifaceted challenges, the potential consequences for both foreign aid and public health remain uncertain. Experts warn that dismantling established programs and politicizing critical data can have long-lasting effects on America's global standing and its ability to respond effectively to humanitarian crises. The upcoming months will be crucial as stakeholders from various sectors demand clarity and accountability, hoping to mitigate the fallout from these sweeping changes. The road ahead may be fraught with obstacles, but the necessity for a compassionate and coherent approach to governance remains paramount. As the political landscape shifts in the United States, the specter of tariffs looms large over the economy, stirring both apprehension and anticipation among consumers and businesses alike. With President Donald Trump poised to implement significant tariffs on imports from Canada, Mexico, and China, economists and analysts are dissecting the potential repercussions of this bold move on the U.S. economy. A recent survey conducted by researchers from the University of Texas, University of California, and the University of Chicago revealed that many Americans are bracing for the impact of these tariffs, which could reach as high as 50%. The study, which gathered responses from over 13,500 participants, indicates that nearly 40% of consumers plan to stockpile goods in anticipation of rising prices, while a third are prepared to set aside money. The researchers noted a distinct partisan divide in expectations, with Democrats generally predicting that consumers would bear a larger share of the cost compared to Republicans. Historical context underscores the gravity of this situation. Since the end of World War II, trade policy has largely been characterized by a gradual reduction in barriers. However, Trump's proposed tariffs, which include a staggering 25% on goods from Canada and Mexico and a 10% levy on Chinese imports, signal a drastic departure from this trend. The largest economy in the world is slated to start imposing large tariffs on its most important trading partners, the authors of the survey wrote, warning of potential global repercussions as countries respond with retaliatory measures. Economists predict that the tariffs will reignite inflation, which could rise from the current 2.8% to an estimated 3% by the end of the year. Ryan Sweet, chief U.S. economist for Oxford Economics, indicated that the tariffs could stifle economic growth by 1.2 percentage points this year, lowering projections from 2.6% to 1.4%. The anticipated increase in prices, 10% for imported goods and 14% for domestically produced items, adds further concern as it is expected to reduce consumer spending. The implications extend beyond consumer pocketbooks. With Canada, Mexico, and China comprising the largest share of U.S. imports, the tariffs threaten to disrupt complex supply chains integral to numerous U.S. industries, particularly automotive and agriculture. For instance, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has already signaled a strong retaliatory stance, emphasizing that Canada is prepared to respond immediately to protect its economy. "It's not what we want, but if he moves forward, we will also act," Trudeau stated, highlighting the potential for an escalating trade war. The response from businesses has been mixed. While a minority of company managers indicated they would stockpile imports, the majority expressed intentions to raise prices or seek alternative suppliers to navigate the new economic landscape. This reflects a pragmatic approach to mitigate the immediate impact of tariffs while adjusting to a potentially more protectionist environment. As the tariffs loom, the Federal Reserve faces an increasingly complex situation, as it holds the potential to redefine trade dynamics and economic policies in the United States and beyond. In a significant development on the U.S. southern border, President Donald J. Trump declared a national emergency on January 22, 2025. This declaration empowers the Department of Defense (DoD) to take necessary actions to support the Department of Homeland Security (DHS) in achieving full operational control over the border. The move comes amid escalating concerns regarding border security and immigration management, and it marks a renewed emphasis on military involvement in domestic security efforts. The President's directive underscores a shifting paradigm in the approach to border management, which now incorporates military resources as a critical component. As part of this initiative, the DoD is expected to coordinate closely with DHS to enhance surveillance, logistics, and other operational capabilities along the U.S.-Mexico border. This collaboration is framed not only as a response to immediate challenges but also as a long-term strategy to bolster national security. The implications of this decision are profound, suggesting a trend towards greater military engagement in domestic affairs. By integrating defense resources into border security operations, the Trump administration may seek to address both political pressures and public safety concerns. However, the deployment of military assets raises questions about the appropriate role of the armed forces in civilian law enforcement and border management. In a related context, the Pentagon has announced plans to rotate some media personnel from its offices, reflecting an effort to manage information flow and potentially mitigate scrutiny of its operations. This decision, coinciding with the national emergency declaration, could be seen as part of a broader strategy to control the narrative surrounding military involvement in civil matters. Meanwhile, in the realm of national defense beyond the southern border, North Dakota Senator Kevin Cramer has recently been appointed chairman of the U.S. Senate Armed Services Subcommittee responsible for overseeing the Air Force and Army. Cramer emphasized the critical nature of his role during a recent interview, stating, "You couldn't exaggerate the importance of the Armed Services Committee's Airland Subcommittee right now." He highlighted the strategic importance of North Dakota's military assets, including the B-52 bombers and various unmanned aerial vehicles, which play a crucial role in national defense. The senator's close ties with the Trump administration may position him to influence future military allocations and programs significantly. Dick McCon, Chairman Emeritus of the National Defense Industrial Association, noted that Kramer's leadership comes at a pivotal time for national security, stating Kramer now has virtual power to continue programs or to start new programs. This relationship could yield substantial benefits for North Dakota's military infrastructure and capabilities. As these developments unfold, the future of U.S. border security and military engagement in domestic issues remains uncertain. The intertwining of defense initiatives with immigration policy may set a precedent for how the military is utilized in civilian contexts. Observers will be watching closely as the Trump administration implements its plans, especially considering the potential ramifications for civil-military relations and the broader landscape of U.S. national security policy. The coming months will likely reveal whether this approach will gain traction or face significant opposition both politically and socially. In an era where youth and dynamism are increasingly valued in political spheres, Caroline Leavitt emerges as a fresh face in the Trump administration, recently appointed as the White House press secretary. At just 27 years old, Leavitt not only represents a generational shift within the government but also signals Donald Trump's intention to engage more effectively with younger voters, a crucial demographic in the recent elections. Leavitt, a New Hampshire native, brings a wealth of experience to her new role, having previously interned during Trump's first term in 2017. She graduated from St. Anselm College in 2019 with a degree in politics and communication, marking a significant achievement as the first in her family to earn a college degree. Her journey is underscored by her athletic background, having played varsity football, which showcases her competitive spirit and determination. In her role as press secretary, Leavitt is tasked with bridging the communication gap between the White House and the public. She has committed to making regular appearances before the media and has opened the briefing room to podcasters and social media influencers, aiming to create a more inclusive environment. Leavitt's approach suggests a strategic effort to modernize communication channels and connect with a broader audience, particularly younger Americans who consume news through digital platforms. Leavitt's predecessor, Kayleigh McEnany, has praised her capabilities, noting her competence and hard work in the correspondence office. This foundation has equipped Leavitt to navigate the complexities of her new position, where she will represent the administration on pressing issues and policies. President Trump has expressed confidence in her abilities, describing her as smart, tough, and an effective communicator, qualities that will be crucial as she addresses a variety of contentious topics during her tenure. Despite the age gap of 32 years between her and her husband Nicholas Robert, a 60-year-old real estate tycoon, Leavitt's personal life is also of interest, adding another layer to her public persona. This unique combination of youth and experience positions her as a formidable figure within the administration, capable of tackling the most challenging issues head-on. As she embarks on this new chapter, Leavitt's role could redefine how the White House engages with the public, especially the younger generation. Her fresh perspective and commitment to accessibility may prove vital in an administration that thrives on public opinion and media engagement. The implications of her appointment extend beyond mere representation. They reflect a strategic shift in how political messaging is crafted and delivered in this digital age. Looking ahead, the effectiveness of Leavitt's communication strategies will be closely monitored as the administration navigates ongoing challenges both at home and abroad. Her ability to resonate with younger voters and articulate the administration's policies may play a critical role in shaping public perception and ultimately the political landscape leading into the next election cycle. As the nation watches, Leavitt stands at the forefront of a renewed effort to connect the government with its constituents in a rapidly evolving media environment.